ever-present God. And my spiritual advisor, when I was back in California, reminded me on several occasions that the prophet Jeremiah, or the person who's writing the book of Jeremiah, has a lot of anger inside of him. It seems abundantly clear in this particular passage that that is true. And as I continue my own journey of discovery throughout this life of mine, I realize that I also have a lot of anger inside of me. I have anger that has been, I guess, a part of the formation of who I am for decades now. I think ever since I was a little boy. And I wonder about that. I wonder how that works in humans. I know that in my case, a lot of my anger comes from, I guess it's a sense of injustice, of the absence of fairness on certain occasions. And so in order to treat this particular aspect of my life, I chose a profession which is completely subjective, in which there is no such thing as justice. And I spent 35 years or so struggling with that, looking very much forward to what I kept seeing in the distance as a career in music. As a career in music. I remember distinctly standing on the stage of San Francisco Opera Company in the chorus of San Francisco Opera, listening to the principal tenors, knowing full well that as I stood there and looked around in the chorus of San Francisco Opera, there were at least 8 or 10 of us who could sing that role better than the individual who was being paid very well to do it. And that's maddening. That's maddening. I remember that we did a performance of Carmen. Now, in the opera Carmen by Bizet, there are some roles in there that you can get away, one can get away with, an opera company can get away with by not having the most, I should say, best or highly qualified individuals singing the roles. There are some what we call minor roles or compromario parts, which are okay if the person who sings it is a real character actor and doesn't necessarily have the great voice. But in Carmen, there are at least 4 voices you need to have that are first class. One is Carmen. The other is Don José, the tenor, the principal tenor. Another would be Micaela, Don José's previous girlfriend, before he was smitten by Carmen. And the fourth is the Toreador, Escamillo. Now you all know Escamillo. Even if you are not an aficionado of opera, you all know Toreador on guard. You know that. You know it. In fact, you, like the rest of the people, would sit in the audience waiting for this Toreador to come out and sing it. And I recall on several occasions they had not one, count not 2, but 3 Toreadors that they called to sing this role, and none, count them, none could sing it. That is not just. It's not just for us, those of us who dedicated our lives to singing and believe that there are colleagues among the bass baritone sections who can sing this role, but it's also unjust for the people who come. So you get a sense of what I'm talking about. And then, of course, I chose the next profession after opera, after music. I chose the next profession, which was dealing with fairness and justice. It's called clergy. So I'm way ahead of the game. Those of you who are far ahead of me in your intellect will realize, Jim, I can help you with this if you just realize that your choices are a little bit weak. we can take away some of that sense of But in the profession I've chosen, I see individuals who become unwell, who are persons who don't deserve to be unwell. I look at individuals. There's one occasion where I stood in the pulpit on Sunday morning in Grace Church, Martinez, California. I stood in the pulpit on that Sunday morning and I said to the congregation, I have to tell you that today I am angry with God. And one of the reasons that I was angry with God on that day was that this woman who had all of her life, struggled with various issues of health, finally got to the time when she could retire. She was looking forward to her retirement day. And hours before the celebration of her retirement, she was taken into the hospital and died. And so I get up in the morning and I go into church and I say, dear God, how can this be? Justice. How can we live in a world that isn't fair? How can we do that? And you're all wondering, what does that have to do with finding coins and sheep? What does that have to do with that? Well, who's grumbling here? Who are the people that are grumbling that the parables would then be told? The Pharisees, the people who go to church every Sunday, who do, they go to the synagogue every Saturday, and they do everything possible they can to live out their righteousness. And Jesus Christ, who is considered to be one of the great prophets by these individuals of all time, is over there with the sinners. He's not sitting down with us, he's sitting down with them. He's sitting down with them. And this will scare you because I can do it so well. That's just not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair that the Son of God, the great prophet of all time, should not be sitting with the people who have tried so hard. And this is the truth. The Pharisees were individuals who tried seriously, honestly, to live out their lives in ways which honored the ineffable God. The God with the name that was so precious that it was unspoken. They tried really hard. And here's Jesus sitting with those tax collectors. It's just not fair, is it? It's just not fair. And we think about this. We think about our own lives. And we think about our circumstances where we see things which are not fair. And one of the people that I listen to when I prepare for sermons said something I thought was really quite interesting. That we are interested in fairness or justice for everyone else. We're looking for mercy for us. And that made me think. It made me think. That's not always true. We don't deal in absolutes. That's one of the beauties, I guess, of the profession that we're professing when we say we are Christians. Because that is a profession. That is something that we say. That is something that we declare. I profess that I am a Christian. And the execution of your behavior as a Christian is a profession. When someone comes forward and kneels down to take communion, that is a profession of faith. And I think back over all the years when I have felt lost. I think back on those occasions when I felt hopeless. When I felt that absolutely I could not see light for the next day rising. And Jesus found me. In the days as I was transitioning out of my former profession, oh, by the way, one of the reasons that I felt so much that this was an injustice is that here is this person so undeserving who is having a career in music, and all the while I was having a career in music. Wow. But I went to a Presbyterian church. And I went to that church because I was a visiting artist in North Carolina. And as I sat in the choir of that church, and that day I was either singing a solo or I was singing in the choir. It's part of my job to help people build their programs and to be present for them and help them understand the nature and quality of music in churches. I was sitting there, and they actually had communion that day. And that day, of course, you all have seen this experience. The bread comes out on a brass tray that's already cut and everything. And then in another set of brass trays are the little plastic, or glass if you're in a really posh place. There are glass with grape juice in it. And these things are going out, and the pastor, Neil Bain said to one of the persons who was about to distribute this, man's name happened to be Tony. Neil said to Tony, remember that as you distribute this, as you receive this, if you were the only sinner in the world, Jesus would have come and died for you. That turned my world around. Because then I began to see myself as the 9900 out there. I began to see myself as a coin through perhaps no fault of my own lost, in which someone is looking for me. Someone is looking for me. Someone who wants me and who understands the value of what she is looking for. So on those days when it's a little bit cloudy outside, when life itself is full of clouds, when there's a lot going on in your life and you can't see the light of the next day coming, on those days when you feel lost, on those days, because I promise you, unfortunately, there will be days when you feel lost. I invite you on those days. I invite you on those days, if you can, to remember that somebody's looking for you. Someone who understands your value is looking for you. So much so that when you are found, when the promise of your being found is fulfilled, the heavens will rejoice.